Kirsty Wark.
Is there any big surprise in tomorrow's Tory party manifesto that could take the heat off Rishi Sunak after what many see as the biggest blunder in recent political history? Good evening and welcome to Newsnight, the weeknight cocktail of effervescent election interviews and insight. Now, no sooner had Rishi called an election, despite a series of disastrous opinion polls, than Emmanuel Macron follows suit after populists seized the day in the EU-wide vote. Something is in the air. On the sofa tonight on Newsnight, two MPs who are throwing in the towel, the Tories' Paul Scully and the Greens' Caroline Lucas, and Christian Calgie, the senior political correspondent of the Daily Express, who is, after all, only 27. We begin with Nick, though, who has been waving his divining rod over tomorrow's Tory manifesto. Is there a big zinger coming?
Well, Kirsty, this is the last big set-piece event before the general election that Rishi Sunak can control. There are more set-piece events, there are the television debates, but he doesn't have complete command over that. And this matters because every set-piece event we've had from Rishi Sunak in the last 6 months has not shifted the dial. So we had two successive cuts in national insurance in two successive fiscal events, didn't shift the dial. We had his party conference speech. I'm the change candidate after 30 years of failure, he said. Well, we know that didn't work because he brought back David Cameron, who was responsible for 20% of those 30 years of failure. So we are going to see the Prime Minister tomorrow saying if he wins the election, he will pledge tax cuts. He's going to say, I'm the heir to Margaret Thatcher and Nigel Lawson. And just to get an idea of that, let's look at this exchange earlier this evening between the Prime Minister and Nick Robinson.
Endless promises of more and more money from the Conservatives. Have you found the magic money tree?
No, every single one of those policies that you've just been through is fully funded and costed, as is explained in every single one of those press releases, as indeed when we set out our manifesto tomorrow, people will be able to see all the details behind it even further.
And tomorrow you'll promise more tax cuts?
We will have a manifesto tomorrow that builds on all the things that you've just gone through, that we've already announced in this campaign, that yes, does continue to cut people's taxes, because I believe in a country where people's hard work is rewarded.
So it's interesting that in that interview, the Prime Minister also said that under this government, it has become more difficult for first-time buyers to buy a property. So in the last few minutes, we have heard that what the government is going to announce tomorrow, what the Prime Minister will announce tomorrow, is he's going to bring back, he's going to revive the Help to Buy scheme to help first-time buyers. And he is going to say that he's going to make it better. If you manage to raise a 5% deposit for your property, and in that interview, the Prime Minister was saying how very, very difficult young people find to raise that deposit. If you can get a 5% deposit, the government will help you take that to 25%. So what you will get is a government loan, they say on favourable terms, that will be 15% of the value. And then the developers, this is a new bit, will do 5% favourable loan. We're also going to see the third successive cut, 2p cut, in employee national insurance rate. That will allow the government then to say that we have halved it in the last year. We will also see that there will be no stamp duty for first-time buyers buying a property up to the value of £425,000. That is the current position in England. That's due to go next year, and they will keep that if they win the election.
That's not new, it's just keeping something.
D-Day is still there. Last week, the Prime Minister apologised for missing the international event, said let's not politicise it. Today he went further and said he hopes that veterans will find it in their hearts to forgive him, which shows he knows it's still an issue.
Christian Calgie, what is your telephone telling you about tomorrow?
Well, I think Nick's just outlined one of the key offers, which I think is clearly aimed at trying to rebalance some of the narrative from what we heard at the start of the campaign, which you'll remember with the national service policy and with the quadruple lock. It felt very much like the Tories were almost trying to weaponise older voters against younger voters. And I think what we're getting tomorrow with, again, a focus on a workers' tax cut and an offer to young people who want to buy their own home is trying to redress the balance. Do I think it'll work? No, I don't. But the crucial thing here is that things could be fatal for the Conservatives unless they win back more younger voters. There was a poll out today.
Fatal as in a party.
Well, yeah, no, but, young people are, the voters of tomorrow. And at the moment, the Tories are polling in fifth with young people. And that is absolutely crucial. And you cannot have the outgoing legacy of the party at this election, if that's the way the polls are going, being anti-young people. So I think that's what part of it being is shoring things up for tomorrow.
Paul Scott, let's just talk a little bit about the mess of the campaign. What's happening to your WhatsApp? What are people telling you about the campaign so far? What are you hearing?
I think, to be fair, in terms of the WhatsApp, I think it's pretty disciplined. People are actually sharing pictures of them canvassing in their patch and what they're doing there, because I think what that symbolises that people realise is they're hunkering down in their own constituencies, thinking we have got a job to do. Frankly, I wish we'd done that about a year ago or something like that. Everyone stay in their lane. We might have been in a better place rather than chipping in on everybody else's work. But what's good about the suggestions of what's happening tomorrow is that we're starting getting out of core vote messaging, because frankly, if you do just run a core vote campaign, don't be surprised if you get your core vote and that's it. So actually starting to talk to young people is really, really important for getting that aspiration and that vision.
Let's just quickly talk about the notion of staying in the lane. Are you blaming some of your colleagues for getting out of the lane?
Well, I think, at the end of the day, for the last few years, it's been pretty unmanageable party. It's been a very difficult party to manage. And actually what we now need is, we needed it a while ago, but we now need, so for the last few weeks, a real clear focus on what matters, the people that are actually there.
But it's interesting because, what you're saying, Christian, is that the Tories are fifth with 18 to 24-year-old voters. You really think the house buying policy is going to bring that up?
No. Look, I mean, it's a start. What I'm saying, it's a demand style thing. We need supply. We need to talk about planning. We need to talk about housing. We also need to talk about how you actually free up when you talk about stamp duty for first-time buyers. What about older people? How you free up housing when people want to downsize as well.
But it's also interesting. It talks about developers paying 5%, but that, of course, will not be if it's not new homes. I mean, that's the other thing. There's not going to be 5%. Caroline.
As well, if I just could. I mean, I just thought it was really interesting when he had that exchange with Nick Robinson, that he didn't even get the idea that actually people could be talking about renting as well. Nick actually said to him, it's not just a deposit. And he said, oh, yes, it is. Well, actually, a load of young people are in their parents' homes because they can't even afford to rent properly.
And renting is now not a fixed thing. Renting is you make a bid to rent. I mean,
exactly. It's an absolute nightmare.
Let's just nail one thing, Paul, about the campaign mess. I mean, Rishi Sunak, again tonight, went a bit further, made more apologies. But why on the day did he not just override his officials in Normandy and say, or override his officials when he saw the itinerary and go, I'm not going to go back?
Yeah, I can see how the itinerary would work that way, but you've got to be fleet of foot, especially in a campaign, because not only does it not look good, as they say in politics, in the optics of it, but it's more than that, actually. It's here in the heart. This is the last D-Day that some of these people are going to be able to attend, the people that are actually there. This matters.
I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think Rishi Sunak has got political instincts?
I think his political instinct was clearly left wanting at that point, and there have been moments in the campaign. I think it's not just about Rishi, to be fair. It's about people around him. We need to take advice from lots of different people. Prime Minister especially, but all politicians take a lot of advice, and there's a lot of moving pieces. But you've got to be fleet of foot, and you've actually got to lead from the front.
Let's look at the Greens for a minute, because we're talking again about the rise of populism, particularly in Europe, and of course populism here. But a common theme is there's a kind of clash between the cost of living crisis in Europe and green policies. They just don't meld.
Well, it depends how you implement those policies. I mean, they perfectly well can, if the political will is there, to make sure that the funding is put into that transition to a greener society. And I've worked really hard with a number of different groups like IPPR and others to make sure that we have policies that make sure that it's not the poorest people who are paying the cost, for example, of having their boilers taken out of their homes or anything else. It's got to be something that is properly funded. Otherwise, we are just giving ammunition to the right to bash us on the head with. But the point is, if you look at the actual green policies, look at insulating every home, for example. That would get people's energy bills down, it would get their climate emissions down, but it would also create hundreds of thousands of jobs. So in fact, it's the poorest people in society who generally actually gain from green policies. So we just need to be a lot more robust and not let Rishi Sunak get away with presenting a green agenda as somehow being anti-people on lower incomes, because the opposite is the truth.
We're going to come on and talk a little bit more about populism as injected by Suella Braverman and Nigel Farage, but Tom Pursglove joins us now. He's had the pleasure of a clutch of ministerial roles in the last year, most recently legal, migration and borders. Before we engage, let's have a look at a clip of Home Secretary James Cleverly's response to a question about the threat posed by Nigel Farage to the Conservative Party.
The simple truth is that the people we welcome into the Conservative Party are people who want Conservatives to be elected and want to help form a Conservative government. Nigel Farage has opposed those things. And of course, what people should understand is a vote for reform will inevitably give Keir Starmer a blank cheque.
So, Tom Pursglove, thank you very much for joining us. Do you think that James Cleverly there is underestimating Nigel Farage?
I think the fact is, I worked with Nigel during the referendum campaign.
You were in the grassroots.
I was very involved in that and campaigned very strongly for a Leave vote. But the truth is that Nigel is in a different party. He doesn't want to see Conservatives elected. But the irony of the situation is that the position that he's taken, which is to field these candidates, actually puts at risk all of the things that he and Reform voters would want to see. We don't want backsliding on Brexit. We do want to see taxes cut. We do want to see legal migration fall, and we want to stop the boats. But a vote for Reform, unfortunately, means that all of those things are much less likely to happen.
Yeah, but after this election, there might have to be an injection of pragmatism here towards Farage. Now, you know, with Suella Braverman in the Times, I mean, she wants to inject populism in the party by welcoming Nigel Farage. What do you make of that?
I think we're in different parties, and they would be very happy for Conservative candidates to lose their seats at this election.
So you're actually saying that Suella Braverman would actually be happy for Conservative candidates?
I think that people who want to see us not backslide on Brexit, that want to see migration cut and that want to stop the boats and want to see taxes fall, should be Conservatives and should be in the Conservative Party. That is the natural home for those policies. They are our values. And a vote for the Conservatives is a vote to deliver those things. Unfortunately, a vote for Reform will simply lead to the wrong outcome and get a Labour government that simply wouldn't deliver on any of that.
Well, let's just be quite clear then. So when Suella Braverman says we need to find a way of working with Nigel Farage and also that she would welcome him into the party, is she wrong?
It's obviously for Suella to justify her
in the same party?
remarks.
Should she be a Conservative then?
Well, of course, Suella is a valued colleague. We have worked together on issues. I was a minister in the Home Office at one point when she was there as Home Secretary. I respect her. I respect her views on these issues. But we are united Conservative colleagues in wanting to get on and deliver that. Nigel Farage is in a different political party that puts all of that at risk.
I don't think you and Suella Braverman are united in the way that you want to progress Conservatism if she wants Nigel Farage in the party and you don't.
I think that if people want to join the Conservative Party who are all about getting Conservatives elected and that sign up to our values, that is something that I welcome. There have been members of Reform and the Brexit Party before that who've become members of the Conservative Party. We're a big family, you know, we've got a wide breadth of opinion within the Conservative family. I embrace people coming and joining us if they want to get Conservatives elected and want to put the work in to make that happen and to make our country a better place.
Well, just let's say that Nigel Farage turns turtle after this election and says, well, actually, I now changed my mind. He's changed his mind before. I now think my being part of the Conservative Party would enhance the Conservative Party and would lead to us getting back into power. What would you say to Nigel Farage then?
I wouldn't object to people who are members of Reform coming across to the Conservative Party and saying that we buy into Conservative values and we support getting Conservatives elected. I think that that's a common sense approach. And over the years, we've seen people take that position and come and join the Conservative Party. Someone like Craig McKinley, for example, who was a member of UKIP and was a brilliant colleague who stood up for the things he believed in, supported Conservative values, stood as a Conservative candidate and helped us to deliver our agenda. And I'm really sorry that he's not standing in this election because of his health condition. We all wish him well. But he shows, I think, the fact that people can come and join the Conservative fold and be a part of trying to deliver on our vision.
Including Nigel Farage?
Well, if Nigel wants to support Conservatives being elected and subscribe to our values, then we should consider any application from him to be a member. But that's not where he's at, is it? The fact is, Nigel is campaigning to stop Conservatives being elected at this election, and that's not compatible with membership of the Conservative Party.
But what I'm really driving at here is we've got a difference of opinion here, because Suella Braverman actually welcoming him in, and you saying, well, you know, if he changes Conservative values, we would consider him. Would you, I mean, in a post-election scenario where you lose,
well, I don't
if
think
Nigel Farage says that he has something with which to regenerate the Conservative Party, he's bringing a whole slew of votes. Look at the polling. Look where he sits behind the Conservatives at the moment. He brings a whole new slew of people to the party and re-energises the party. What if Nigel Farage is the man to lead you out this mess?
I think that we've got a leader who is putting forward a compelling vision to the country. We talked about, in the earlier part of your package, you talked about these changes in relation to housing for young people. We've talked about the position around the triple lock. We are the ones who can be trusted to cut immigration, both legal and illegal, but we are the only ones who can deliver that in this election. Nigel Farage is standing against us in this, and he's putting all of that at risk. So that is the situation that we're in today, and we've got to fight this election hard, and that's precisely what we're doing on doorsteps up and down the country. Tom
Pursglove, thank you very much. Nick, what do you make of what Tom Pursglove just had to say there?
Well, Kirsty, that was interesting. Tom Pursglove sort of diplomatically disagreeing with Suella Braverman, saying, look, Nigel Farage can't just walk into the Conservative Party. If he wants to sign up to Conservative values, then of course he can join. And the point about Tom Pursglove is that nobody can doubt his Brexit credentials. And the future of Nigel Farage and whether he can join the Conservative Party on his terms will depend what sort of Conservative MPs are elected after the next election. If it's lots of Suella Bravermans, in he comes. If it's lots of Tom Pursgloves, there'll be some hurdles for Nigel Farage to have to clear.
Now, just before we go on to talk to the Liberal Democrats, Caroline, you've not been without your own issues in the Green Party, charges of anti-Semitism. 4 Green candidates are not standing, and we understand from the Times that there were investigations of several others. You've also been hoovering up some protest votes from Gaza. What do you make of the issue about anti-Semitism that does seem to dog the Greens at the moment?
Well, the first thing to say is that anti-Semitism is absolutely appalling and we don't tolerate it, and it should have no place in our society or in any political party. But I would dispute the idea that the Green Party is particularly afflicted by this. 4 cases is 4 cases too many, and I absolutely agree to that. And 4 candidates are no longer candidates. There was a process that went.
And your vetting process has been thorough.
I believe that our vetting process has been thorough when these cases have been brought to our attention. As I say, 4 candidates no longer are candidates. We've got things in place like training and anti-Semitism and so forth, and in countering anti-Semitism. We're working closely with Jewish organisations to help us in this. But I think, unfortunately, anti-Semitism is something that is in our society, and all of us need to be fighting it as hard as we can wherever we find it.
Before I finish talking to you about this, just to say you're leaving. And you've been here since 2010. I mean, you've talked about the kind of arrogance you felt among some MPs, particular sections of MPs.
You're tempting me to. Well, I mean, I suppose I experience as a sole Green Party MP, I'm most likely to be interlocking with government ministers. And yes, by and large, I'm afraid a lot of them are very arrogant. And I think one of the things that makes me most angry is that you sit through a whole debate. Perhaps sometimes you're the only person who's really raised a serious level of challenge, and then the minister just simply ignores you. I think that's just downright rude, apart from anything else. So yes, there's arrogance, but there's also dysfunctionality, and I think that's a bigger problem. Parliament does not work properly. We need to look at the way in which those processes should be updated. It simply doesn't make sense anymore that we spend so long walking around those voting lobbies, for example. Lots of reform that's needed.
Thanks very much for that. Well, Nick, you were at the Liberal Democrats launch today. Were you on the ground or were you in flight somewhere with Ed Davey?
Well, sadly, there was no Ed Davey paddleboard. But what I was interested to was ask him about the EU, because their manifesto for the last election had on the front page, Stop Brexit. To get to our relationship with the EU, you had to go right to the back. And what did you find? A 3-point journey to take us closer. First stage is, let's have closer relations. Second stage is join the single market. Third stage, possibly rejoin the EU. And I was interested to ask Ed Davey, what about the gap between joining the single market, when you have to follow free movement, you have to follow the rules, and membership when you actually get a say over those rules?
Are you saying that we would go into the single market as a rule taker before we have a chance of being a rule maker as a member?
On your point on rule taker, we're a rule taker now. We're a rule taker now. You know, the Conservatives try to make out that, you know, they'd somehow got out of that. They hadn't. They hadn't. You know, not for once, they've not quite told the full truth.
Davy there, well, they launched the manifesto today, as I said, and we are joined now in a minute by Christine Jardine. Well, Christine Jardine joins us, I think it's from Edinburgh, indeed Glasgow today. Actually, you are in Edinburgh. Yes. Good evening to you. You haven't been in any kind of roller coasters in the last 2 weeks, have you?
No, I managed to avoid the roller coaster today. It looked like fun, but I've never been a fan, unfortunately. I don't think I would have enjoyed it.
Well, let's come to some of the serious stuff in your manifesto. Let's deal with the NHS. You talk about giving patients in England the right to see a GP or member of staff in 7 days or indeed in 24 hours if it's urgent. But isn't this a false prospectus? Because you can't enforce this in any way. You just say it's down to the Secretary of State for Health. You can't enforce something like this. So what you're doing is you're giving people false hope.
No, what we're going to do is we're going to increase the number of GPs. We want to recruit another 8,000 GPs, increase the number of primary care GPs in the service. But we also want to invest in introducing free personal care for those who are currently in hospital because they can't get a package at home, so that they can move out of hospitals and we can begin to get down the waiting list. And once you start to do that, then you begin to get people to get the treatments that they're waiting for, the operations they're waiting for, and you begin to move people through. So what we really want to do is to break the backlog by introducing these 8,000 new GPs and lots more social care workers.
So the personal care, which has been in Scotland for the last 20 years and is not cheap. And in fact, already the Nuffield Trust has done some number crunching with you, and simply your sums on health, particularly in terms of personal care, are inadequate. They just simply won't work.
No, we're quite confident that we have done our sums and we have done them properly. And what we have done is we've taken a very cautious approach in all of our sums in the manifesto, because we recognise that we don't want to overpromise, and we have funded things properly, and we've built in things like behavioural change and the impact. So we stand by our figures and we think they're properly funded and they will work.
Let me give you some more figures now. You want to ban short-haul flight under 2.5 hours within the UK. We just looked at the timetables tomorrow morning. 6:20 flight from London to Manchester, £131. 6:30 train from London to Manchester, £184. One, are you going to subsidise the train? Or two, are you simply going to say, well, then they'll have complete control of the market, so train fares will rise?
No, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the tax on flights. And if you can get a train for less than 2.5 hours travelling, so it wouldn't affect people, say, travelling from Edinburgh, Glasgow or Aberdeen or Inverness to London, but whatever your journey is, if it's less than 2.5 hours, then we should pay more tax on those flights to discourage...
No, we understand that you're actually going to introduce a ban on flights less than 2.5 hours within the UK if there is a similar train. So is the manifesto wrong?
It would be a tax on these flights, so that we would be taking more trains. For example, we would also want to see more sustainable air fuel used in short-haul flights. So it's not
a ban. Let's just be quite clear. It's not a ban, as it says in the manifesto. Right, let's look one more. The policy to increase council tax for second homes up to 500%. How is that going to go down in seats where you're a marginal with the Conservatives? Do you think that's going to win you a lot of Conservative votes?
Well, I think what we're looking at is a situation where we have a housing crisis in this country, and what we are concerned about, and what people tell us in seats up and down the country, is that they are concerned about the way that a lot of housing has been taken out of the market, that we need to be building more houses, that we need to be improving the supply of housing, affordable housing in the right place at the right price for people. So yes, I think people will recognise that what we want to do is increase the number of houses and the access to the number of houses, and incentivise people to get houses and properties back into the market.
Thank you
and
very
I think
much,
that
Kirsty
works
Wark.
for people in every part of the country.
Thank you very much indeed. Quick look at the front pages, beginning with the Times. Tories offer lower taxes and help for home buyers. Sunak makes election pitch as heir to Thatcher. Daily Telegraph, Sunak offers tax breaks to landlords. And Nigel Farage saying they just think what we said to Tom Pursglove. I won't join the Tories, they'll join us. And the bottom there, boys 12 are the youngest murderers since the Bulger killers. And the Guardian, Tory right plans to give Sunak set of demands if Manifesto falls flat. And then the Eye, Sunak pins hopes on NI cut to rescue stricken Tory campaign. And the Daily Express, Christian's paper, up the workers, PM promises 2p cut in national insurance. And onto the Daily Mail, Britain's 12-year-old machete murderers, the youngest killers since the Bulger killers after horrific, unprovoked attack on an innocent teenager. Well, that is all from us tonight. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to have a quick word just to finish with you guys to say, Paul, what are you going to be doing next?
So I've got a couple of boards that I'm going to start up companies that I'm going to be getting involved in, an insurance company called Adiona and another energy company. But I also want to keep involved in London politics as well, really coming up with some ideas and policies for London from a centre-right point of view.
So actually, when you look back now at what's happening during this campaign and what you're going to have to do over the next 3 weeks, because though you're standing down, you are campaigning, what is a key thing? We hear that some of the senior people in the party are saying if the manifesto falls flat tomorrow, there's going to have to be, a change of tack.
Yeah, look, I think it's really important, not just for, as Rishi was saying earlier, who's going to be Prime Minister, but what happens over the next few years. So if we're in opposition, how credible can we be? Have we got the right people there? Can we really reconstruct a great, vibrant Conservative Party as well that's leadable? Because at the moment, you see the Labour Party holding that Ming vase. Actually, we should be just bold in what we're talking about.
This is the key thing we're seeing now, is the Tories are transitioning away from any hope of winning to just trying to be a credible opposition. They're trying to avoid a Canada 1993 and turn Britain 1997 into a somewhat of a respectable result. And that's the thing we saw with the Lib Dems there. The risk Nigel Farage is taking here is he thinks the opposition choice is between the Tories and Reform. Actually, the way the vote's splitting at the moment, some polls even suggest the Lib Dems could be the official opposition, and that would be a disaster for the right in this country.
But what do you make? I mean, I want to just pick up on a couple. Obviously, we've got this question of more cuts, and also what they're saying about, the idea that there'll be a move on Sunak to change tack. But on the whole question of what it is tail wagging the dog in terms of what Nigel Farage is doing here. The Tories won't come. The Tories will come to me. I won't go to the Tories.
Look, I think it would be very odd to see the chickens welcoming the fox into the coop. And
so what does that mean for Suella Braverman then?
Well, she's. She'll do what she does, but I'm afraid to say, doesn't have much power within the party anymore. And actually, what I've been very interested to see are prominent right-wing candidates, people like Priti Patel, disagreeing with Suella as well. And I think this Farage question is going to dog the Tory leadership campaign. And I, for one, can't necessarily say at this point where the members are on that question.
Can we look at the future as well?
Yes, let's look at this post-election landscape from you.
Because I want to talk about the way in which a Labour government with a massive majority actually isn't great for democracy, which is an even stronger argument for having some Greens in there who will hold them to account, who will ask the difficult questions, who will push Keir Starmer, frankly, to be a bit braver and a bit bolder. Where is this 28 billion that was supposed to go into the green economy? Why isn't he talking about wealth taxes? Why is
what's better for people? Is it a small majority or a big majority better for people?
I think we need a small majority with the Lib Dems holding the balance of power so we get PR.
It's interesting to hear Christian, who has very serious contacts in the Conservative Party, talking about how it's fatal if they don't get young people out there to vote for them. And Christian also talking about maybe the Liberal Democrats could end up as the official opposition. I put that prospect to a senior Liberal Democrat a few weeks ago, and they said that's completely mad, that's not going to happen. I was talking to a veteran Lib Dem today, talking about that, and they were saying, we are now beginning to think of that scenario. This person has been to 5 constituencies that the Lib Dems are targeting. they found 3 people prepared to vote Conservative.
But what do the Greens
And Paul
do?
Scully is nodding at the idea of the Liberal
Yeah,
Because you've got to be strategic. You've got to. It's not just for this election; it's for the next election and the one after that. Because actually, all you're doing is putting off another generation. It goes back to what I said at the beginning. If you go for your core vote, you will get the core result, and that's not good enough for the long-term decisions.
So what do you see as the Greens' role when it comes to a Labour government?
Making them bolder and braver
So you're
and
the
better.
reform for Labour?
We are, and they bloody well need it, frankly, because they are being so cowardly right now. This is a moment of massive climate and nature emergency. It's a moment of massive social inequality. Why is a Labour Party, for example, not saying that they would reverse that dreadful 2-child benefit cap, for example, which is thrusting thousands of young people into poverty? That is why the Greens are there. They're going to be there to hold Labour to account, to push them to be bolder.
And I said I would ask you what you're going to do afterwards. What are you going to do?
Lie down in a dark room. No, I'm going to work on climate and nature in some way. At the moment, being the sole Green, I'm the front bench spokesperson on absolutely everything, which is quite exhausting. So climate and nature, in a way, yet to be determined.
Thank you all very much indeed. That's all from us tonight. I'm here tomorrow. Until then, sleep well. Good night.
Hello there, good evening. You'll have noticed just how chilly it's feeling for this point in June. There's